Good morning. It is August the 1st, 2020. We have some good news coming up. We do have the AGA that's going to be happening online. I guess it starts today. I'm waiting for some details. I will be participating, and I hope everybody else is going to be participating in it. Uh, Today, we're going to do some reviews. We're going to dig deep down into the double-digit queues as we usually do, but this time we're going to start off with 25Q and 19Q. Was quite pleased to have been tapped by Odrum. We did meet and play over on Dragon Go server, but he also has an account over on OGS here, so we're going to pull into one of his games here and see what we could figure out about the DDQ side of things over at the 25 to 20Q side. So this isn't too bad. One of the most common things you'll find with beginner players is the willy-nilly stone placement. It could be anywheres on the board. So I guess the best message for the beginner players is there's standards forms that we follow, and you could choose your 4-4, 3-4, sometimes even go to a 5-4. Just one thing to remember: this is just a game. This is for learning. If you lose a game online, what does it mean to you? Nothing. So let's try out new things. So if you played a stone here, played a stone over here, played a stone up here, not much of a problem. You're going to see this in a lot of games that you review. This is a good Shamari. It is a defensive move to open up with. It is not necessarily a problem per se. Uh, for black, we do have a lot of interesting first moves that can happen. The Shamaris, which are fairly common, approaches, invasions. Some people just take the extra Hoshi points. You can play it just about anywhere you want to. This is all going to be very decided as the game develops. So you're going to have a different outcome no matter what you choose. So if you want to start defensively, that's not a problem because black already has. Well, black's going to start behind. You don't really want to be this way, but it can work to your benefit. Because if black starts aggressively, then hopefully you can start the divide and conquer side of things. With this, you already have a defended corner, so you have one good group, one group to worry about. White has two groups to worry about here. This would have been a mistake as far as the white side goes. It's always best to approach one of the weaker stones. This is the weaker stone here. This one's already established. So what you approach with would be up to you. With a group like this, black would then have two living groups, but now you're established and you get to choose the direction of play. When you approach a strong group, it could often work against you. And black actually gets to do a lot of deciding here of what's going to happen. And because white's starting behind in the situation here, life doesn't actually quite exist yet. So this is going to be a problem for white. It's going to be a lot tighter and a lot increasingly difficult to live in as opposed to approaching the other corner because you're starting that one move behind. So if you do see a place of power here, do not approach the place of power. So with black, and this is going to be very common, the common thing that happens with 25Q, 25Q, even up to 15Q is, and this situation is going to be quite apparent with it. White is the stronger player here, even if it's just by 6 stones. That's still a very big difference, whether it's, 1 Dan to 6 Dan, 10Q to 4Q. This is 25Q to 19Q, and it's very common to play defensive moves. But when you have the initial strength here. Uh-oh. I forgot to take my shutter off, and nobody told me. Let's go back to the beginning a bit here. So, we have the 4/4. We have the potential moves you could make as the next move for black here. Black can do something aggressive. Black did choose something defensive here. You could choose something a bit more territorial. This is Tengen's not the best move, but there are some people in a niche market who do like it because it does give you a completely different perspective of the game. Breaks a lot of ladders. This is the Shamari that Black had taken. Not a bad move to begin with. This is still pretty good, but it's White's move here with the follow-up, which was a little bit problematic. So if White chooses the weak corner, when the situation is done on the weak corner, uh, Black doesn't have to take this move here. This is recommended. The game can get a little bit dirty if Black doesn't play it. So this little cutting move here is going to be a little bit detrimental later on. So we do recommend, especially as a beginner player, make your living shapes. Try and make things that are uncuttable. This is a very good way to start. And it is going to leave you a little bit behind because this is a Gote move, especially after a nice exchange here. But this is what you want. Take that little bit of strength so you don't have to worry about coming back to it later on. As a beginner player, you are going to have a lot of groups on the board, so instead of worrying about is it alive, let's make it alive first. And making the living shapes is going to be quite to your advantage. So here, Black did make the defensive move, and this is going to be quite indicative of a weaker player playing a stronger player. You're going to want to make sure that this is going to be more alive than it was before, and it was alive before. So even if White did try and make an extra move against it, even with all these moves, this group isn't dead yet. It's in trouble, but it's going to take that many moves to put you in trouble. So these two moves that could have been played elsewhere as bigger moves. Not that you want to give up a corner this early in the game. It would be recommended to attack. This is going to be a fair attack on the white stone. So with this white stone here, all you want to do is squeeze the life out of it. And you can do that from a couple positions here. You could even approach it from slightly farther away. And this is going to give you a bit of an advantage later on because if, when white runs, it's going to make it easier to approach the stone here. You're going to have a bit more support. Not as easy for this to come in and start attacking, and you can, stretch out nicely. And black gets some ice space. White has the ability for some ice space here. This is not going to be a problem. We're not aiming to kill, especially as a beginner player. You don't want to be trying to kill absolutely everything on the board. Killing everything on the board is going to be a terrible goal to have. The more you try and attack, the stronger your opponent gets, and quite often the weaker you're going to get. This is a game of territory. So take your territory. Black gets territory, white gets territory, black gets territory, white gets territory. This is a nice balanced game. This is what is nice to see. And this is also going to help you because you have to start practicing your eye shapes, practicing what's alive. So this here, it is a bit of a slower move because it is just development, and all you're doing here is developing. Not a bad idea because you're now surrounding the territory. This is a very good extension to have. But this leaves white in a stronger situation now, and you still have a weak stone, so white can pretty much dominate the board. This is the wrong side to come in on. Definitely the wrong side. Black does have the advantage now, and black played the right move. This is absolutely fantastic. When white has just a solitary stone like this, and you can approach from two sides, approach it from two sides. Don't approach too close. Approaching too close could also be problematic. This, not too bad because you still have a supporting stone here. But this is one of those things that the stronger you make your opponent, the weaker you can get on the other side. So this is not good shape to have, but as you start playing stronger and stronger players, especially when the rank difference gets very large, they know how to use it a lot better. So stick with all the proper moves and yeah, attack from a distance, and this is a very good one to have. It's going to prevent white from stretching out. Black's going to have the ability to run this portion now. And it would be one of those, if white stretches, white's going to weaken himself or herself. And the stronger black gets over here, because this is still a fair shape, this one is going to start looking like it's more in trouble now. the ability for it to run is decreasing rapidly. So white makes a jump out. I would have preferred something like this. You may as well come out completely instead of trying to lean on a strong group, because not a lot has to happen against this. This is fairly strong. It would be different if this stone wasn't here, and then you'd be leaning on a weaker stone. But, you know, trying to approach a stone that way isn't going to do much. And so, what I talked about earlier, before I forgot to unblank the screen there, is the almost a willy-nilliness of this. This isn't a bad placement of a stone, and it's not a bad placement of a stone, because if you think about it, your opponent is trying to run. And what you really want to do, of course, is block them from running. But of course, this is now coming from the point of view of you're trying to kill. And I wouldn't say that's what we want to do right now. It would be good to learn, and this is why 9s and 13s come in handy. They're over quickly, and you can learn a lot about life and death in a very short amount of time. So instead of playing somewheres in the middle of the board, because the middle will require development later on, we can do a little bit better. So we could approach this a corner here. And you could approach high, you could approach low, everybody has their preference. But now this makes a bit more of a difference. So if we just call a casual exchange, now black has the ability still to do the same thing. White's still going to want to run, and sooner than later, but you start getting surrounded from a distance. And if you started chasing, then you're going to be chasing into places of power here. If white's going to concern themselves with this group trying to live, then black has the added advantage now of coming down here and having far more support. It's going to be much easier to start reducing this territory that white's trying to develop. Not saying this is the best sequence of moves, but I guess as a 25 to 20 Q, this is kind of what you're looking at. So this move here, yeah, you are going to see that in some other games, but it's what are you going to do with it? You now have a stone just floating in the middle of nowhere. It's not developing anything. If white makes a move and you're going to start surrounding from a large distance like this, you're getting something, but this is going to be very invadable. This is going to be very difficult to defend, and it's going to take that many more stones to try and knock out just these two. So the stones in the middle, trying to develop the middle it's a little bit counterintuitive. And even if we go down to just complete basics of it takes that many fewer stones because you have the supporting walls here to make life in the corner. Fewer stones than the middle to make life on the side, and of course, if you want to make life in the middle, would take the most amount of stones because there's no other support. So avoid the middle right at the beginning of the game, and I guess that's the entire point of the middle game, is that's when you're going to worry about the middle of the board. We'll start in the corner, move along the sides, and then take over the middle. So white stretches pretty far here, and it wouldn't be unexpected because you want to try and get out as quick as possible. But with something like this, if you see a shape like this, the first thing you should do, just play smack dab in the middle. Playing smack dab in the middle of something overstretching like this, and it actually does work at many different levels. You know, if you're going to be 15Q, 10Q, and you see your opponent play something like this, play smack dab in the middle. This would be one of those, I would call it cut when you can cut. If there's a cut on the board, this is a pretty good one. Because it doesn't matter what your opponent's going to play against it, you have the ability to know to run it. So this stone, it does ladder pretty close to a white stone. But at least in this situation, you're running the board now. Is this going to die? Is this going to die? Dividing and conquering is going to be your best offense. And we do like the divide and conquer portion of things. It does make the game pretty dirty. Essentially, if black has fewer groups on the board and white has more groups, white is going to be more likely to lose a group. As a beginner, though, and even as you get close to a SDQ, there's a lot of SDQs that do have difficulty keeping track of too many groups on the board, and it's not until you get very close to the Dan level that Really, that's why if you actually had 10 groups each, that you're really still keeping track of 10 groups each and counting, but that's something you'd have to practice on a regular basis. So if you can create more groups for your opponent, do it. Do it every single time, you won't be disappointed. So here, although white made a blatant move, it's you should not always respond to what your opponent does, but every once in a while it would be a good idea. This does add a lot of benefit here, because these stones still don't have anything. They're not quite alive yet. And if white was going to do anything to try and play towards them, there was a possibility coming in here would be advantageous. But the advantageous side for white actually is this stone over here, and this stone over here. So if you actually look at kind of where they're pointing, this stone here, if it had to go anywhere, does have support on this line and this line, and same thing here. If you chased it on one side, it gets pretty close to where the other stones are. If white was going to try and come in this way, there's nothing. There's just going to be walls. There's not a lot of places to play towards. So if you are going to cut off your opponent, then cut off your opponent where the support is. And if you're going to make territory on this side, that's not a problem. But you're letting your opponent run, and you're letting your opponent run to a place of power, and as they're doing that, or a place of strength, I would say, and while they're doing that, they're slowly adding pressure to other stones as well. So you could actually play just out here now. It blocks off a little bit of support. It gives more support if you're going to play in the middle here. Because if white runs on the outside, this is a much easier separation. If white runs on the inside, then you also have... you'd get a couple of forcing moves here. Take your peeps when you can, because now that you've peeped, it makes it much more difficult. You could attack the stone far more directly. And it would be... maybe not that one. It would be that much more difficult for the stone to run. What white's left with is just a string of stones. Yeah, they're running, but now black is a bit more developed, and black has more of an advantage here. And this situation is what's going to work in your benefits. So black takes a little bit of territory. Because this doesn't get a lot of territory, this would be a bigger move. It doesn't attack. You don't have to attack. Attacking is, again, this early in the game, keep spreading out. White does get a good move here, but it's a little high. If black wants to come in underneath, then there's no territory for white. This would be pretty good. It is one thing now when it comes to influence, and that's going to be a little bit difficult to grasp earlier on, and I get that as a 25Q, or even as a 20Q. There's a lot that you want to learn, and it will come in time. It will. But as a DDQ player, start with where your points are. If you know how to make points, this is going to be a very good beginning, and then later on, learn how to use the influence. So make your points first. As you start getting closer to the SDQ, influence is going to become much more important. But if you don't know how to make life and you don't know how to make your territorial groups, then having all the influence on the board is going to mean nothing, because all your groups are just going to collapse. And this is going to be a good start for that, because there's a lot of weakness in this shape. So if white plays elsewhere, you now have the ability to come back for the same purpose here. Divide and conquer, just like this in here. If you play right in the middle of two stones, a three-space jump like this, you're separating these groups, and this is the kind of thing that you want to look out for. These stones are weak, this stone is weak, and you can do that because you have stones that have life. They have a base. This is what you want to see. And white's just going to have floating stones hanging around. Not a bad defense. But however, this stone here is pretty weak as it is. Black can't play on this side. Ladder would work in white's favor, but black can still play on this side now. And the problem with this is now black's getting incredibly solid territory over here, and this is still a little bit on the invadable side. What's most likely going to happen is you might see a wall that stops too short, There is a right amount of stones, or I guess there are a right amount of stones for this if you are going to build a wall. And I would recommend always taking the one more, at least have 4. In this situation, black would be able to ignore, but that would be detrimental to this stone. But again, that's going to get into a lot of influence here. But this would still be a fair exchange. This is too deep. You have a lot of options on the board. You have the option to keep expanding. Approaching the strong groups, just like over here, when there's already a Shamari but only a single stone over here, you would approach the single stone and not the defended stones here. And so likewise, these are already surrounded. You're going pretty deep into your opponent's territory. So all of this was all White's territory. When you jump in like this, you're already surrounded. This stone doesn't really stand a chance. Yeah, possibility you throw this at an AI and the AI is going to find some shenanigans and, you know, somehow, you know, finagle his way out of this. But, you know, that's AI thinking. This is, we're humans here. So the best thing to do is to avoid that specifically. And with a nice, juicy, low-hanging fruit over here, approach this one. You could approach on this side and then start to come back and maybe attack this stone. Likewise, you can come in on this side because this is where White wants to develop all the territory. So as White's trying to develop territory here, the first thing you want to do then, of course, reduce it as well as you can. But don't approach the strong stones. Approach the weak stone. And then White's going to decide exactly how the reduction happens from here. So if White defends the corner, you get to expand, you get territory over here, and White no longer gets to develop. If White comes in on this side, then it's going to be a similar problem as before, and then we have to start counting. It's a terrible choice. It'll be, how many groups does White have on the board? So, 1, 2, 3, 4 groups. You have a little bit of a string of stones. But for here, Black has 1, 2, we'll call this a third group for now, and a fourth group here, with a lot of potential. But Black's a bit more established because this is a not to worry about group. This is a not to worry about group. White has 2 worry about groups here, and now, well, this could be cut as well. So separating this stone, White can still have an extra group on the board. So don't come in. Don't come in right where there's where your opponent's already established. If your opponent's already established, just forget about it. So now you might just be giving your opponent some free stones. Unless you think about it from this way, but then you would have had to have thought about it from that way. Hmm. Complications. So Black defends. Typically, with a stone like this, the easiest way to live would be for Black to come into the corner. So White does make a good move here to try and get rid of that stone. So this is a fairly good defense. This stone is still weak. Black comes out, starts to build a wall, and now White can actually come in. So this Hana here is actually is very good. Even if Black wants to cut, there's not much that can happen because these stones are just that weak now. So now you're battling with stones that are essentially dead, and as a beginner player, I guess you haven't learned a lot about life and death as it is, and because of that, trying to make this live is going to be darn near impossible. So the skill set's not there. So now you've jumped into enemy territory, just one guy, surrounded. If this was an actual battle, very easy to lose. And the outcome of this is the loss. So the problem with trying to save stones, and you can't save them all, is now there's black stones here that are weak, black stones here that are weak. This isn't completely knocked out yet, but it could be, and it was. It'd be better to come down here. If black tries to run, white can just take these out easily and have a living group here, extend the living group here, and black still doesn't have a lot of places to go. This will still be a pretty dangerous cut. So through this, white did a little bit of a misread. Oh no, that still worked out. So these stones are dead. These stones are dead, but black's playing now from a very disadvantaged situation. So the game, which had a lot of potential right away, because black jumped into the corner here, unfortunately, and this is quite common. This is what you're going to see in a lot of DDQ games. As you start playing in, and the more you play in, the worse things end up for you. And this was precisely why. So previous to jumping in with this move here, everything was actually still developing quite well. No problems with the game, still a lot of potential, still a nice balance. But it's this here, this is where you'd pinpoint things started to go downhill. So when things start going downhill this early in the game, it's going to be very difficult to recover. And unfortunately, I guess the recovery didn't happen. And you know, it could have. But sometimes, if you play this, and once you've played it, now you know that you've made a mistake, don't keep playing with it. Play towards it. So this stone had some Aji left into it, but not so much that you could have developed with it, but that you could have used it for other benefits. You could have played towards it. And by playing this way, instead of trying to save every stone, which is always a mistake, a timer? A timer for what? Yeah, you were still updating your computer, so I started without you a little bit. Yeah, that's right. So for the on OGS, I started a group called Q Club, and unlike a lot of the other streams out there, we do have a lot of people who stream. They're very good players, and I do like enjoying watching their games and their mindsets as they play. But what I wanted to do, I wanted to create a stream dedicated only to double-digit Q and reviewing their games and trying to get them caught up to the SDK world and hopefully get them into to done level as well, which would be absolutely fantastic. So, you know what? Watching people play a game is great, but it doesn't help the DDQ players get better sometimes because there is a very large rank discrepancy there. So when you're watching a 5D play and they're talking about their game and you're only 25k, it's not quite making sense. But now this game here is Odrum 25k against a bunch of letters I can't pronounce 19k, and I would like to see Odrum get to be quite better, but at a level closer to what he would understand. So this is dedicated to that. I am not a for-profit stream. I do not want any money for this. I just enjoy reviewing games for people who just want to get better at Go, but want to get better at Go because they want to know what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. So this is what I focus on. And there's a lot of things that were done right here. There's a lot of things that were done wrong, and if we can praise the good stuff and fix the bad stuff, hopefully we can have that much more competition. And that's I gotta say, that's what the name of the game is. Jill, do you have a game for review? That's a tough one. You leave two good options there, life or death or second line moves. I'll go for second line moves today. Second line moves always come in handy. Alright, let's see if this works. Interrupted by a site crash. We had oh, I see. I didn't know we had a site crash a couple weeks ago. But this early in the game, do you really want to be playing on the second line when there's a lot of development yet to happen? Let's see how well this develops. So, two-stone handicap. I see. So, two-stone handicap. Yeah, best place to play is take the corner first. In the book, second book of Go, that's a tough one. Jumping into a corner right away when you already start at a disadvantage. It's not bad. I know you know your Josekis, so this is actually probably going to work out for you. What I find interesting is, in the good old days, any moves on the second line were essentially bad. And now more modern Josekis actually do have a lot of second line moves on this one. So I guess, yeah, 12k and JR Owen 15k. So black defends after white approaches, that's good. And that's very aggressive. When you're behind a stone, it's okay to be aggressive. Is this actually the proper move now? Usually when we see an approach like this, it's more common for white to slide in a bit to take the corner or just to come out. But I'm not familiar with this approach here. And if black just defends and takes this instead of playing the other move and getting cut to bits? Well, yeah, you can add some good supporting stones to this. Black still has the good options here. Typically coming into the corner could be a bit slow because it leaves black the option of coming out on the other side. The first good move is usually to come out at B here. And if black takes the corner, well, that would be terrible. But if black defends that, that's going to be pretty small, and then white gets another big move someplace else. I can see the advantage of playing it first. So this is good. So this is what I like to see, and this is the fun about exploring the board. So you can see that there is a deficiency in this group now, and the deficiency in this group, you can't necessarily, you know, jump in and hope to get something right away, although every once in a while that happens as well. There's also that little bit of a weakness here. Yeah. Yeah, because these two stones become a little bit weak because of the surrounding stones. So you'd get a bigger chunk. The only thing I don't like about moves like this is if this is how it played out, it's the that much more strength within the inside group here. So now, black's pretty solid here. Yeah, white's alive as well, but this is it becomes questionable trying to invade, and I guess what we were talking about earlier this morning or late last night was the sector line issue, and how deep can you come in and start invading stuff? But we didn't get too much into that. This still isn't too bad. I like the way this develops as well because having that stone there does make it a little bit easier when you actually come in. Now that would be too high. It would just be best for black to squeeze. Uh-oh. So when you have a squeezing move like this, when black comes up and he's one stone higher, the one stone higher does add a lot of problems here. The one stone higher is lets white stretch out along the bottom and essentially just make life, which is always going to be the better option. If you could make life, you just make your life. Uh-oh. There we go. This would be happy enough for white because it still leaves a cutting point. If black comes in one more, then white can just come down and happy life. So why did you come up instead of go down here? This is... If black gets the squeeze on here, the Aji here, well, that's... the cut wouldn't work. You don't have much for ice space in the middle yet, and black now has some fairly strong territory. And even with something like this, you wouldn't have to worry much about second line moves. Yeah, the cuts do come in handy. So this could have gone a little bit differently had black played the other way. I do like this. Play towards the center. Playing towards the center is pretty good, but I gotta say squeeze life out of your opponent first is sometimes even better. This does leave a little bit of an issue because of the 3 stones here. This isn't a happiest shape. The jump was a mistake. This one here. Yeah. It is, because you have 2 stones on 3 stones here, which is a little problematic. Although, it does kind of fix it up a little bit if black played this way. If black played this way and took the influence, I would say this would be a fair exchange. If white's going to live, and that's if white's going to live, white still might need an extra move here, yeah. Threaten to come in underneath, but this would actually be... I don't mind this situation, even if you're going to throw in your peeps here. I would take that little bit of extra influence and give up a little of extra territory. But likewise as white, exploit the shape first, and then come in and make your ice space. Unless the AI says do something vulgar like this, because these stones are a little weak, but then this gets a little on the dirty side. This is that kind of variation that you wouldn't even want to play in a professional game, in a tournament game. Like a white take all the extra risks. Yeah, it is just the game. It is just for fun. Yeah, so white's alive, and then I guess this is where it disconnects. Yes. So the peeps that are available, depending on at what point the shapes are developed. So which second line moves, and which move did it want them? Let's have a look-see. Oops. Gonna try and pull up the AI review on the other board. Q17. Yeah, Q17 looks like an interesting probability, but again, with the Q17, it was just playing on the same weakness here. So all it was just to capture a couple of stones, and a second line territory is not usually good territory to have. And with something like this, I would say this would be good as well. So if this was one of the variations, essentially what's going to happen from here is, yeah, I would have played it the other way. This essentially would be Sente for white as well. So not only does black have to fix a little bit of bad shape here, but white still has control of the board, so this would have been beneficial. So I gotta say, as a variation from the AI, it wouldn't necessarily recommend it as anything more than, you know, it's a situation that you know you can settle quickly. White's alive, and you get control of the board. So it does a lot of things all at once. It's different, and in some ways, again, like what I was saying in the previous game, you don't necessarily want to jump into your opponent's territory. But in a situation like this, I really enjoy the way that it plays out, and I actually wanted that even earlier on yet. So yeah, Q17, even at a move like this. But yeah, there's not a lot that black can do against these stones either. And with these cutting points in here, it does cause quite a bit of a mess early on. It's interesting. Especially if this group could have actually lived. Or does it? Yeah. Well, I guess black would have to kill. Black would have to make the extra move. Take the Sente. This is the fun thing about the AI recommendations. The AI does recommend a lot of interesting things here. And until you really play it out to see what kind of benefits there could be for it. So I do like that move. I do like that, and this is the very good adage. It's so the rule is if there's a cut on the board, there's no other moves on the board. And in this situation, the cut does have various implications for the opponent. Oops. Let's see. Because the way this ends up, this would be incredibly complicated. But yeah, take the cut. Take the cut at other points, and even taking the cut here would be an interesting situation. So yeah, I like that variation. Sometimes I gotta say the AI knows what it's talking about. And in this situation here, because it's a forcing move, um, stretching out was actually a good move. This would have been acceptable as well. And it does like stretching out over here. Like a lot of these peeps don't make a difference early on. But these peeps, it's just kind of nice sometimes to have a stone in the area. Especially if your opponent's just going to respond to every move that you make. When you have just a stone in the area. Yeah, the AI still would have recommended this. It makes that much of a difference. Because you never know, is this going to help stop a ladder later on? Is it going to do anything whatsoever? Sometimes just playing towards it, just having something to play towards is good. In case he clamped. There's nothing wrong with a clamp every now and then. Well, surprisingly enough, even according to the AI, the game was actually quite even through and through here. I wouldn't worry about that too much. You still have a lot of potential here. It's still a fair size move, but yeah, you'd have to start coming out as well. But you'd be comfortable in here. It's a comfortable little home to have. No, I like the situation, and actually with a move like this, even coming back here, just the way it begins, like this is, if recommended by the AI, as far as I'm concerned, this is a little more unorthodox, because even when I started learning, these things weren't considered, these moves weren't played. But likewise, the very first thing the AI recommends is essentially that variation. To come out this way, and it didn't even consider this. I guess that makes that much of a difference with this stone here. Well, no, you did make the right sequence of moves. And your opponent, I guess, did make a mistake. Just the way the response to this move here. Because the move at 015 was just that much more at a little bit of a deficit. So I do like this, and you know, if this actually pops up in any of my games anytime soon, I'm going to give this a shot. I would like to play this out in a few games to see how the variations go, and you know, how much more of a benefit there could be. The only other thing I may not like about it, so this is good, this extension here. But I've noticed quite a bit in games that opponents are making moves like this now as well. Because when you talk about your sector lines, it becomes that much more difficult to invade anyways. And this also helps in the direction over here. Yeah, white's going to get a move over there, but you know, if you can take on the outside, the influence that you can get. Influence, of course, being human players, we are going to make a mistake. And let's just hope that it's to our benefit. Yeah, and it's not gonna be about the kill. You know, it's as stronger players or even players. By the time you get a 5Q and a 5Q, hopefully you're even enough where there's not going to be any major deaths unless there's a big blunder on the board. So, you know, it's too bad this game didn't make it any farther. I would like to see how this would have played out. Like, this was very interesting through and through. Do you have another game? I guess you said you had some life and death in there as well. And is anybody else at DDQ that would like to have something reviewed? Because I'm okay with that. Alrighty. Let's see how this one goes. So this was an even game. 12Q, 12Q. Nice. Things look interesting here. Well, should be dead. Maybe. So let's burn a stone. Jump right into the middle. I don't think so. Should be dead. The only thing I'd see would be jump in right away, but... So what's... Top left group is in danger, yeah, that's... So for this here, it's saying that this would be the variation. Oh, no, not quite. 1, 2... Oh, that's last. Well, I played that wrong. So it's saying this is the variation, but that's... I think anything against that would be fairly alive, wouldn't it? The best you can do is hope for a mistake. Like if your opponent responds wrong. But even then, that would be comfortable. Okay, let's see what happens from the beginning here. So 4-4, 3-4s. Fun openings. I like it. Yeah, reductions are very big because, especially with a small group like that, there's a lot of forcing moves against it. But even its recommended opening move with B8 there was I don't think that there's any moves enough that would be able to kill it, so it's still a fair shape. So influence, black tries to negate the influence. Oh, this is interesting. The recommendations for black to come out, that's a lot of influence. Interesting situation. I like how that developed. But the consideration of this. So here, you get to attack twice. So this corner's in trouble. I would guess if it would be beneficial for black to take this side here. But then you get to do quite a major reduction over here. There's a lot of danger in this. Well, the second line moves. It depends on what you're going for. So this here, it's more of kind of two attacks at once. So say black defends on this side, white can come in. This is very detrimental to the corner. Uh, it's going to take that many more moves to make the corner live, and I'm not 100% sure that there would be life in here. So this would be quite the mistake for black. Likewise, oops. Black defends on this side. So you force the life, but then if white comes in here, there's no life down here now, and black is now forced into the middle. It's going to be a very troublesome group, because not only is black surrounded by a lot of support here, that this can't be knocked out. So it's a little early in the game, and I wouldn't say that this is even entirely a bad sequence of moves, because organically there's a lot of forcing moves in here. Black's going to have to make these moves to live. And when you and this is actually very good teachings to have, because when you're dealing with a lot of corner situations, knowing that when you have this situation that you can actually jump up and this is uncuttable if you have a nice stable group here. The only thing I don't like is now that you've stabilized this group, then there's a little bit of destabilization over here, which could be problematic later. But because these stones are in immediate danger, they would have to be saved right away. But yeah, there's a lot of benefit to this. You know, playing against it, essentially what you're doing is you're setting up that no matter what black does, black has no choice but to come out here now. But since now you know black has to come out, it would be just outright play on top. And there's not much that's going to be able to happen here. Black's going to have to burn a lot of stones. If black comes out, this is good chasing as well. Black's not in a happy place here, especially with that kind of influence surrounding it. So I would say this is interesting. Uh, I guess we're no longer talking about very beginner players here. With a very beginner player, I do like to emphasize, do not play on the second line. But in a situation like this second line play does have a lot of benefit now. So this would be, as far as analysis goes, yeah, you are SDK, and or at least very closely approaching a stable SDK rank. This is a good next lesson to have. Now you also do have one advantage. Black's not going to play this. Oops. So with a situation like this, it's not making the situation it's not making it any better. This sequence here, it doesn't do much. There's not a lot of development, and it just makes it that much worse for that group there. So you do have a lot of things that you wouldn't have to worry about here. But yeah, just keep chasing. In a situation like this, it just goes back to all the other stuff that we've discussed in the past. Don't aim for the kill. Kill, fun, yeah, great if it can happen. But if it doesn't have to happen, then you have the advantage here. Take Sente someplace else. This has now been forced into the corner. Do a lot more forcing around it. So, say for example, you were able to develop a nice wall through here because of your attacking. Well, now where's Black going to run to? So you can have that much benefit later on. But yeah, you could have made just a couple of nice little forcing moves in here. No, 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 I don't like it. That's not a good place to jump into. Especially the way things are set up right now. That is definitely not a good place to jump into. You responded properly. And yeah, this is the way to go. This is very good. You defend your corner. Yeah, potentially there's those trick moves that can be played in there, but there's not a lot that can be done because these stones aren't alive. This is just a string of stones. And the more this runs, the weaker this is going to get. I wouldn't have played against it so soon. And even then, if I was going to play against it, maybe a clamp would be in order. Ah, right. So you get to develop. Still not the best shape here, but I think you still have a good advantage here. You would still get some good light eye shape in here, and this is still a string of stones, something that you can chase. But just outright playing on this side, I think that could have been a little bit of a mistake. Black comes in underneath, good threats, because if you ignored, that'd be a fair way to connect. You still get the eye shape, but I don't like the shape in here now. I guess giving your opponent life could be problematic. Yeah, this is a bit more cramped for Black. Still kind of does the same job from what you were trying to do, but I think this just adds more pressure than the other side with White over here. And if Black comes in here, that's a lot of influence for White. That's a lot of extra moves to save it. Yeah, that wouldn't even be a stable connection. White can come in underneath. So Black takes life. Black takes life with a lot of expended moves, and now this is in even more danger. But either way, good sequence. Your violence is in the right place. You're attacking the proper groups here, which is good. So the more you attacked this, the weaker this got. So that's still a very good sequence of moves. Only issue with this sequence here, by defending just that little bit over here, this becomes... I guess you give yourself... I don't like the shape. You're going to have to fix it. Those are the... too many forcing moves. Yeah, that's good. It's fixed when it needed to be fixed. I think this could have come out farther now. That was too small for black. This is, not so much of a burnt stone, because it is going to help keep things together here, but it's going to still be a little bit on the cuttable side. But how did that develop into a kill? There we go. Hmm. Yeah. But it's interesting. It's only a mistake if your opponent answers properly to it. So I like the way things developed here. It's a very interesting development for the game. I think overall this still leaves you just in the lead by... you would still be in the lead by about 20 points here. No, you'd be... Or do you have a deficit here? I guess the bottom's not quite settled yet. Yeah, this is a very interesting situation. There's only one correct move here. Well, yeah, because if black comes in and defends here, there's going to be a cut there. There's not that, yeah, there's not much that's... Yeah, maybe, maybe not. Maybe the cut couldn't have worked even after, even if black at J14. You may have to let it live. Or that, no, it's... Because you'd have to run with this stone. You still can't let that get captured, so you can't come back for that. Unless I'm wrong in reading this, but as weird as it sounds, is this an actual viable variation? Because no matter what, you would always have to save these two stones. But of course, to prevent it, I'll just play this. Well, yeah, but to prevent that all, then again, that would go back to the shape over here with the... Could it have been made better because of something like this? Well, it is a fun development. I do like the way that that did work out. And fortunate for you, it did work out in your favor, but that's not always going to be the case. Like this here was still pretty solid. Just let your opponent run on the second line. Take the nice balance. And even then, nothing will happen in there. Just extend. Something nice and calm. Why you gotta be aggressive all the time? And actually, would moves against this be able to work now? This would be interesting coming in now after you get to influence this corner. This makes it very different. If black's going to correct something there. We have very, very... Oh, no, 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 no. Gotta fix, gotta fix. That wouldn't happen. Black's gotta jump out. Either way, that's a terrible corner. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. But yeah, this works now. It worked before, but this works better now. Maybe this is what the AI had in mind when it said that it was probably dead. But how much of this could be prevented? So black jumps in. You just come in underneath. 2 stones in the middle of nowhere. You still get the possibility of playing over here. The side still needed development, so why wouldn't you just take the side here? This was a little deep. Yeah, so the weakness is still here. And I do like your adage there, if you're not attacking, your opponent takes territory. But you're not attacking here necessarily, and you're taking territory. So this would be a healthy balance to have. And like I said, you could still come in and still do the sequence here. It's still a good sequence. But maybe when it starts is the difference in the sequence. Still gives for a good monkey jump here. No territory there. But now you're being chased again. And this would be something to avoid. Yeah, I think to make it easier on yourself, take the bottom territory first. And then hope this collapses later. But again, if you keep going for the kill, one of these days your luck's going to run out. And again, you could also leave this settled. If there's something bigger to play something else, you get a lot of good moves here. If not that there's much for Ko's on the board now. Yeah, the little black group is alive. It's not a problem that the little black group is going to live. It's that, say you could have turned this into some type of fancy Ko. That your opponent plays something wrong somehow, somewhere, somewhen. And now you want to have a Ko here. You want to have a Ko for death. It's nice to have a Ko for death, and if you're going to have a Ko for death, now make sure you can have as many moves as possible on the board so that you can, win the ko here. And forcing to settle didn't help you develop that much anyways, because there wasn't much here. It's not like there was a lot of territory there for either of you. Yeah, I guess that doesn't work anymore. Yeah, from here, good kill. And what's the point spread on this one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14, 21. Yeah, white doesn't have a lot of points here after that. 20 points in the top corner, top left, and 5, 10, 15 points in the middle. And black has all the points in the top right, so I think this is going to be one of those games where you had to have that kill. That kill was absolutely necessary for this. But not a bad game. It does lead to a lot of interesting situations here, and the potentials of these cuts, and the mistake of just a single move here. Like really, it is a game-deciding move. So it was well read on your behalf, but your opponent did blunder up, and that's something that didn't work out. But it is a fun little game. But in this one, I hope the big takeaway was this move here. And again, this move still stands. It's damn near the end of the game. So let's imagine that this lived. So if this lives and there's nothing else going on the board, this still is massive, and this has been massive for a good portion of the game. And it's these sequences here that it's not out of the realm of possibility to take them when you have the chance, especially now. If your opponent does respond wrong on this side, and why not? So even if this does live unconditionally, which it looks like it is going to live unconditionally with this move here, then you still have a big move on the board, and I think this is about all you had left to even it up a bit. Which is one of the problems with playing against a handicap. When there's a handicap on the board. Oh no, sorry, the previous game was a handicap game. So in this game, the way things that were going is you fell into a little bit of a deficit, especially. Yeah, you gave your opponent a lot of points here, and I think this should have been played out differently. With this here, it does help with the point spread right now. And you shouldn't have to rely on a large kill. You are both fairly even players, and maybe a little bit too aggressive. Uh, Good style, points for a lot of what was on the board, but sometimes pull back, stretch out, worry about your territory, make sure you're alive without having to force a small group to be a small group. And there's still a lot of mistakes in here, even if black has to come through and play an extra move here. My concern about G14 is yeah. Maybe not. But again, that's relying on a lot of that to even up a game. It's again, you shouldn't have to. And yeah, your style is a nice broad style, but it doesn't leave you a lot of territory by the time you're done. And I think even in some of our games, you start off with a very strong position, but because you keep attacking with a strong position, in our games you can't knock something out. And in a game like this one, uh, you shouldn't have knocked something out. And if you didn't knock something out, this would not have worked in your favor. So I think one of the best things you can do to help balance out your play is to, once you're ahead and you were pretty close, you have the right ideas. You know where to attack. Pull back a little bit. Pull back, make your life spread out a little bit, because this is going to give you an extra 15, 20 points in here. This extra 15 and 20 or 20 points is going to work to your benefit. Say your opponent doesn't respond directly to what you did here, you still have the advantage. You can still do the chase. You can still make things happen. And you might give up some of your points in here, but if you get more from this, that's going to be the way to do it. So just because you can right away doesn't mean you should. And if your opponent does burn a stone to live, well, this is or not necessary to live, but to prevent the fight. It's still going to work to your advantage, because this is now a wasted stone. This would be a thank you move to you. You now get to make another big move someplace else. But there's a lot that didn't get developed that maybe should have been developed. Yeah, stop playing over here. Still not bad shape to have right away, but add some support to it. Add some support, come over here. And now you have a bit more support. You have places to run to. So develop a way, and if you ever had to run, you could run in the right direction now. And then it's going to make it that much more difficult for your opponent as well. So your opponent comes in with a nice Shamari, and you could play on the other definitely have to play on the other side. This is something that you'd want to prevent. Just to prevent the development even. And yeah, a little bit of a sloppy shape. But your opponent already has too much. If he's going to spend all that time defending this, then you get just enough moves against this. So just a little bit earlier, stretch out a little bit. Yeah, stretch out. You still have an influential game. Your opponent does get to come and take out some territory underneath you, but that's nothing, because you do have that much of an advantage here. And I think this would have played out very differently. This is a better way of using your influence, but you'd have to pull back. Don't be as aggressive. Your aggressive play does lead to some very interesting games. Your influence is very well played with in a majority of the games that you play. But in something like this, this would be better influence for you. And then play from here. Like even then, don't even worry about something like this, because you know you have it. This would be game deciding. Right, but keep developing. Like just keep developing. Build it all around before you start moving towards it. You have a lot going on here. So here, there's no influence. So start developing. Oops. There we go. So develop your influence. Uh, if you're not going to worry about the territory, which is fine, but just make sure that after your influence is developed, that you can you have further attacks available. And I would say this would be fair. And you're just breaking through to the SDK, and even with some SDKs that I've played, because they're worried about the corner and the side territory, they've already invested. So why not just carry on? This is actually a likely situation that I've seen pop up, and I even have something similar going on, or had going on with a 4K over on DGS, and on DGS, it actually worked out in my favor because they weren't looking at the influential. Yeah, corners are overrated. But every once in a while, this corner is working for you because this living corner is the only thing keeping these stones repressed. So don't just throw a corner out the window because you could throw a corner out the window. But then I would say, I think through most of the games I've reviewed for you, between move 50 and 70 is when there's a big difference in play. And right here, even if you had played this against me, if I was playing black right now and I fell into this trap, I'd have great difficulty getting out. And this would be at move 50. Even then, ignore that play out here. So here's your influence. Here's your big game. So now I hope to see something like this in the next couple of games you play. Instead of getting into these little dirty fights too early on, or even if you do, then jump out. Alright, so you jump to the EGF, you do enjoy that. I'm going to see if I have anything else that I can develop out here. And I hope to see you again next week. And are you in the AGA tournament this year? I know it's being held online. I signed up for it, so I'm hoping to have some fun in that. I'm told games start today, but I'm still trying to learn all this. I've never done an online tournament before, and to jump into something as big as an AGA, this is massive. Alright, so I look forward to seeing you on the next stream for sure. Alright, so I'm going to do another quick one here. So the previous one was, previous duo were from Jill. She's very fun opponent to have on the stream here. This next one is Hayes with a Z. Being Canadian, it is a Z, and for you Americans out there, this game is against Hayes with a Z. Unless he wants to Japanize it, and it's a Haze with a Z or Z. So, whoever he wants to be, that's up to him. He's been a very fun opponent to have. I've played a lot of 9x9s against him. Anybody who knows me from the 9x9 tournaments on OGS, I have dominated quite a few of them. It's been a little bit of a pet project that I started studying different variations of 9x9s, and I gotta say my best game, I actually bested a 6 Dan a couple of months ago, which really got me into it. But playing DDQs on a 9x9 where anything can happen, and yeah, sometimes us SDQs lose to a DDQ on a 9x9. But then we jump to a 19x19, and on a 9x9, when it's sometimes, you know, winning by 2 points and 3 points, it doesn't seem like much. But then you jump onto a big board like this, and then you wonder, how did that close point spread go from 3 or 4 points to 60 to 150 point difference? And 9x9 skills don't necessarily translate directly to a 19x19. So he's 16Q. He's come a long way. I do like to see his progress. And the way that a 9x9 develops onto a 19x19 is if you take this slice of board here, and you want to call this area in here just the 9x9. After you've played enough 9x9 games, can you turn this into a 9x9 situation? And I absolutely believe that you can. So you don't have that wall that you have on a 9x9 that absolutely lets you, you know, play those fewer moves and take a corner. But likewise, This is going to teach you life and death. On a 9 by 9 you can go through life and death over and over and over again every time you play because you have no choice. You have to learn the least amount of moves you require to live in certain situations. Luckily, you have 4 corners and 4 chances to attack or be attacked. So this is good development until there, but this is still good development. There's no problems here. Making territory on the 5th line here. That's pretty good. All you have to do is fix one cut here, and this is still a fairly stable position. But unlike a 9 by 9 where you have really only one choice, which is to always keep the pressure on, you can no longer do that on a 19 by 19. On a 19 by 19, pressure doesn't have a direct translation anymore, because even after this, could probably be ignored. So white can do something else now. White could make another big move and carry on. White would be happy and be alive here. However, having this shape be as weak as it is, white chose to attack. So black does have a fair idea here. And on a 9 by 9 having a little bit of territory, if this was split up that way, white gets a few points, black gets a few points, you settle and it's done. But on a 19 by 19, it's no longer the case. You have everything working against you. Well, actually, this would have been better. So if white really was going to put the pressure on here, the inherent weakness to a shape like this, we'll just burn a stone, is when this happens, there's a big liberty shortage in here. With this liberty shortage, you then have to choose which you're going to save. So it's not just as easy as, yeah, you're going to do some cross-cutting here and everything's going to work to your favor. No, because the shape that was created here had way too many cutting points in it. And so this is what happens. So on a 9 by 9 you can be braver. Sometimes you can get away with a bad shape that turns out to be a good shape because you have a lot of support and cuts can't always happen on the inside. On a 19 by 19, this has now changed. So even if the moves are played, you have to come back and you have to keep defending all of these errors that happen, all these cutting points that are made in the shape. So one thing you don't want to do is attack directly like this. Attacking directly is going to work against you a very, again, I'm not going to say 100% of the time, but frequently this is going to work against you. So don't come in so far. Like this here, white had the pullback. White extended, made some territory, defended a little bit of this. There's still some potential to invade, but you want to divide and conquer. This is the kind of fun that you're going to want to have in your opponent's territory. You want to go this way. So it's not as direct as just hammering the stone on the head. So this does create a better situation for you. Further from here, instead of jumping in directly like that, play against the weakest stone on the board. This is going to be the biggest takeaway for all you DDKs out there, especially about 15Q and below. What I do see frequently, and it was in one of the first games that I reviewed here, the same thing happened. So there's development over here. Black keeps playing against the strong stones. Don't play against the strong stones. There's a beautiful looking weak stone over here. So take the weak stone right away. And again, this is going to be the kind of thing that's going to change the outcome of the game sooner than later. So this is a common variation. White comes in here for the defense, black comes in here for the defense. This is not a cut. For those of you who can't read it, which is fine, this is a DDQ stream. This works. This works for black. This is just a ladder. This is a ladder without knowing it's a ladder. So the cut's just not going to work. So white comes in, white gets a small corner over here, white gets just a little bit over here, but now look what black has developed. Living, and a lot of potential over here. This has a bit more developed potential for black than this has for white. So this is very advantageous for black now. But you do have to pull back sometimes. Uh, don't attack directly. Attacking directly is going to work against you more often than not. In this game, the rank difference is about 10 stones. Because of that, it's not going to work. This is a fair wall to have, but you have to keep in mind that these points in here are going to work against you later on. And something that white doesn't want to play yet, but it's going to be there. It's coming later on in the game, probably. So this here is good. I like this approach. This plays very nicely with this stone. White did come back for some territory, and it is poking at something in there. This here does have a weakness because of it. With these two stones, jumping in actually does work as something of a good attack. Maybe not this soon in the game, but something that you definitely want to look into. So white defended, which is good. This would have worked as well. Sometimes just take your territory. Just taking your territory is not an issue. Take your territory and run is fair. Your opponent can't make many moves against this. Can't really jump in. Uh, yes, can jump in, but we'll say for now, if you're DDQ against DDQ, it's going to be very difficult to live. So learn your territory, make it when you can. If you're worried that much about an invasion, play down one. But this is good because this does leave a lot of potential for development of territory within this area. The opponent defended. This would have been a mistake for black. Come out here. Because this can't be made successfully. The cut's not going to work, and if white does try to make it work, it's just not going to happen. So this here, a little bit of an empty triangle situation going on. That is the wrong side. Come in here, and then when white comes in, there's a lot less to worry about. And even then, I wouldn't worry about it. Stretch along the side. Let this hang there. This is nothing. This is just a little bit of a probe for something futuristic, and it's not even well placed. The more you play against it, though, the more well placed it becomes. So this is fair. I do like the way that this happened here. Black played the cut nicely. Let's see. Black played the cut nicely, got some development, and left white's running towards the middle. Although white is in a slightly better situation here, white is still running towards the middle. But here's what got missed. It just might be better to play on the inside than the outside. Playing on the outside, not a problem, but try and keep these groups separate. There's a lot of Aji left in here. There's not a lot that white can do against this. White's in a very bad position there, so that's not going to work. And this can't be... Well, it can be, but it can't be. There's going to be a lot of problems within the shape. And so you burn a couple of stones, but you get a couple of stones. White takes that, black takes this. This is still pretty happy, and now white's getting a little heavy over here. So no problems there. So all white wants to do is stay connected. White stays connected nicely. This is a good move by black. You want to keep this separated. But now that you have... The white can't jump into these. So just keep up with it. So this here, these aren't going to happen. So being overly cautious for nothing. Where was I? This one here. So this here, this is not preventing anything. So you may as well come out the one more. This would have worked very well for that. Oops. If white defends there, keep pushing, and now white's going to have to choose which side to defend on, which would most likely be the one on top. So again, this just helps keep the pressure on, and then you don't worry about stuff like this because the stone's dead. Yeah, this stone's going to collapse, not a problem. You can learn how to throw away a stone every now and then. Throwing away a stone's not a problem. We like throwing away stones. Learning how to sacrifice is definitely beneficial. There's a lot that's going to work to your advantage as you learn how to sacrifice here. So this didn't necessarily have to be defended for white, but white did defend, so pushing through here, very good, but you see how this developed differently now. So with this connection pushing through, black can no longer do a cut here. There's just nothing that's going to work out well for black. So unfortunately, a lot of that agi is gone. So sooner than later. So this move happened too late. It happened too late. It gave white a chance to fix shape. So now, the difference here would be is essentially night and day. So this is just a little bit overdeveloped, but we do have some options for black here. This is a little bit of a dumpling shape, and you don't want this dumpling shape, especially this early in the game. There are some problems because there's a weakness here now if you tried to use this to reduce. And now white's quite confident that you won't be able to reduce here because a couple of moves and you run out of liberties. However, you got a cool little peep in here, and it's these things that can help you develop as well. Still not the best time for it, but maybe just having this stone in here, just for future reference, could come in handy. But at this point now, white's actually taken a fair portion. So black now has to come back, take the corner, or approach. These would be the last couple of big moves on the board, and I think C might be on the wrong side. Probably on the wrong side. Because there's a lot of influence over here still, and there's not much left for attacks. Even for black to play this, it's not too detrimental of a peep that may not have to be responded to right away. Might be good to respond, but it's not going to do much. So from here the game is pretty much over. The way black had developed in here did give white quite a bit on this side. These cuts aren't going to work. You can try adding some influence in here, but there's just not enough liberties to make something happen. So attacking a strong group is going to cause a lot of issues. So from here, once this got settled, now would be a good time to just jump ship, cut and run. So we have a triangle, we have an empty triangle, just jump right into the corner. If you jump right into the corner this soon, you would essentially have saved yourself a lot of trouble later on. And this here, yeah, black's going to live. We're not playing this because we're looking for a kill. We're playing this because black's going to take the corner, white's going to take the influence. So instead of white having an extra, 10, 20 points over here, you now take them all away, you give 10 points for yourself, and white has nothing. This is a good name of the game here. You want your opponent to have less. If you can't have it, don't let your opponent have it either. And so this is again where playing on a 9x9 would come in handy. Learning all the possible sequences to the 3-3 invasion. There are a couple of good ones. We do cover them over out in Joseki school there, where we have this fun one, this fun one. We have this fun one over here. There's a lot of possibility here. So choose your favorite Joseki, learn the variations of a few of them, but essentially learn how to jump in at the 3-3. Learning how to jump in at the 3-3 is going to save you a lot of time and trouble later on. And unfortunately from here, this is about where the game does go downhill. I'm not going to review further from here, but I do have to go. And I would like to thank everybody who did join me today. I know there's an AGA broadcast, so anybody who wants to jump over that, I know most people already did already. There's some very exciting pro games going on today. The EGF tournament is on. That's where people jump to, and the AGA tournament does start today. and with the AAGA Go Congress, which is now the Ego Congress. So I'm hoping everybody did have a chance to sign up and place in the tournament there. I do hope to see as many of you there as possible. And if all goes as planned, maybe you'll be my opponents one day, and I look forward to the day where everybody can defeat me. So do have yourselves a wonderful weekend, and I hope we get to play again soon.